Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Final Fantasy VII Remake playthrough. We're still in the sewers, but fortunately the first run through the sewers isn't very long. It was like, it's only two parts, but it was just awkwardly in the 40-minute range. And
Did you say first run through the sewers?
Yeah.
We come back?
I knew I was due to come back to this place once I saw that fucking gate.
Yeah, there are expanded sewer areas that you can only access with a special key that Don Corneo has. So during Don Corneo's second story arc later in the game, you do spend some time in the sewers. And you have to fight Apps again in a more difficult version of his boss fight. But like, this first run is literally like a slightly extended version of what it was in the original game, which was 2 screens of sewer tunnels that were just a transition from Wall Market to Train Graveyard. The real star of the show at this point in the game is Train Graveyard, which in the original game was just an area with some random ghosts that was said to be haunted if you talk to the NPCs. Here, there's a story to why it's haunted, and you deal with that just sort of in a coincidental fashion. You deal with it on the way back to Final Fantasy. So on the way back to Sector 7, it's the most Final Fantasy boss fight situation you'll ever have.
Yeah, the Train Graveyard is actually really good in this game. I commend them for doing a good job with that.
I like what they did with it.
It's like, narratively speaking, the Train Graveyard reminds me a lot of the Ship Graveyard from Final Fantasy V now, where it's sort of just a place you end up on your way to elsewhere, and there's a story behind it, and you deal with the boss that rules the place, but it's just kind of an interlude between plot points. So I enjoy that.
Intergrade.
Well, at the very least, the Train Graveyard was something that was in the game, so they had reason to expand upon it here compared to some of the more padding elements at other parts of this game.
Yeah, well, like, there's that underground laboratory you go through while trying to rescue Wedge later, which is it's the least Final Fantasy VII thing in the game, and it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Well, yeah, it's a completely new element.
Yeah, it's a completely new element, but it's also an element that it's probably the part of the game that feels the most like the complication of Final Fantasy VII.
I didn't mind it, though.
Can I nitpick again about not just this game, but video games in general? Why do we need shimmying across stuff?
Oh.
We've had this conversation before.
I don't know.
All shimmying and crawling under and running down long, empty hallways is the game loading. That's all it's doing.
As far as the video game design trend-setting reasoning for that it makes your character feel like they're doing things other than just walking around. It tends to give games a tense, sort of adventure-y, negotiating a difficult environment feeling, which
basically it's an attempt to avoid the God of War situation where when you're going to a new area, you just run down this really long spiral staircase because it's just loading.
You say that though, but I take that over the window just freezing and we get a buffering icon on the bottom right, you know?
Yeah, but like,
I mean, it's a weird situation where it just kind of depends on the skill of developers and kind of what they're going for, because, you know, we go back to using an example like Last of Us 1 on PS3, that had an extremely long front load, but then it never loaded again afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, can we just do that?
I would generally prefer that, I think, in most situations. I can think of exceptions, like if it's a game where like you would have to reset for whatever reason, and then I don't want to, like, if there were a Fire Emblem game like that, fuck no. No, thank you. I don't want to have someone die.
It's funny because, you know, as much as that we're complaining about that sort of design philosophy, it's slowly becoming an antiquated thing.
Thank you, SSDs.
Yeah, to go back to PS5 Remake, you know, they boasted next to no load times.
No, I mean, I'm recording Spider-Man, the PS5 version, right now for the channel, and fast travel actually means fast travel.
Yeah.
How long were the load times on PS4 when you were fast traveling?
It's not that bad. It's like 10 to 15 seconds.
And I'm not going to give the fast travel much shit on original PS4 Spider-Man because it did come with those subway sequences.
Yeah, but to give this context, I think the PS5 Spider-Man version has the option to turn those back on.
Yeah, because it loads too fast. It doesn't actually have time to actually play those scenes.
Yeah. And those are really charming. Like, I understand, like, don't get me wrong, I will also be an advocate for if it only takes 2 seconds, by all means.
The remaster for Mass Effect 1 has a similar thing where, you know how in the original there was those long-ass elevator rides, but now the remaster doesn't need quite as long to load, so they just have a skip the elevator button now. So you can let yourself ride the elevator and listen to the news broadcasts or the conversations if you want, but you can just skip ahead. And that's going to make the Normandy a whole lot less annoying, I'm going to say. I can't wait for that game. I've already pre-ordered it.
Oh,
Will you remember
okay.
to use the cannon?
So, I'm thinking of Streets of Rage because when you were doing the spell menu there, it just coincidentally happened to do a panty flash for Tifa. And if you look at Blaze's sprites in all of the Streets of Rage games, they all have gratuitous panty shots. So it's just like you made this a Streets of Rage game.
That kind of
Even worse
happens
than the Japanese
when you do
version.
high kicks in a mini skirt. So
Yeah.
I mean, at least they gave Tifa like shorts underneath.
I mean, they're already bending the laws of physics to make Tifa's skirt more modest than it should be, because like if you were doing those kind of kicks in a skirt like what Blaze wears, the skirt would constantly get caught on your thighs and just be flashing everyone in every direction.
The way the sprite is drawn in, I think it's Streets of Rage 3, there's like a little light sheen on it that makes it look like it's supposed to be made out of latex or leather. Yeah. And it's like, that thing should rip or break her hips.
What Blaze is wearing is something very similar to what original Tifa had, which is this tight sort of like mini skirt. In Remake, they've altered the skirt so that it's like, what's the word, pleated?
It's got like those kind of stretchy things, yeah. Well, it's not really stretchy, but it makes it so that the thing can stretch.
Like it's not one smooth, continuous piece of skirt. It's like got little gaps in it.
It's flat, almost like a was it a Sailor Fuku?
Something like
that.
The point where you can tell that 4 men are doing this comedy change.
Yes, absolutely.
Like it's the kind of skirt that's designed to be flexible. And you know, that was another thing that people were complaining about when Tifa's skirt was revealed. It's like, why did they change her skirt? They changed her skirt because if you wanted to animate her original skirt in this, you'd get shit like the Dissidia version, where it's stretching in all kinds of unnatural and ugly-looking ways every 20 seconds.
Yeah, it wasn't even the matter of the design of the skirt itself. It was the really obvious shit. It's like people. I saw people bitch more about the fact that they gave her modesty shorts. Like
here, I think I understand why that happens, and this is because this happens with everything on the internet that people don't like. And I know this because I myself did it. Am someone who did this when the Pokemon remakes were announced. If you see something you don't like, you have to justify it. And to justify it, you go away from the big things that are obvious about what you don't like, regardless of how valid those are. And then you nitpick. Because it's just like, oh, it's not because her boobs are too small. It's because her skirt isn't one piece of material anymore. Yeah, and it's not
not respectful to the original design.
Okay, no joke. When Dissidia introed Tifa, people were like, oh, here's Ninja Theory shitting on Square's version of Tifa. And it's like, The
only time I can remember where the alternate quote-unquote more modest versions were actually more popular was oddly enough Pyrrha and Mithra that are coming to Smash.
Oh yeah,
no, what was the issue? I never played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, so what was the issue with Pyrrha?
Okay, so basically in order to keep the E10 or whatever Japanese rating it is there, they basically they did the same thing for what's her name from Fire Emblem Fates, the older sister from Nor. Basically they had to cover up their chest more. Camilla. So they basically had to cover up their chest more and add some like stuff on their legs, so it's not like super short skirt or like the tiny shorts and stuff.
Okay.
Apparently, those designs for the spirits in the base game were actually popular enough to where when I think the DLC came out, they added like those costumes into the game.
Yeah, because they're not so obviously and shamelessly fan servicey. Is the thing, because it looks like they're wearing actual clothes.
Even with the changes, though, they are still clearly designed.
Oh, absolutely.
No. Did you see Sakurai's pick of the day last night?
I didn't.
It is Pyrrha and Mithra with the raccoon and bunny ears on. So it's like
they've got the Mithra's got the blushed like big mouth face, and Mithra's got the tsundere like grr kind of face. So like he absolutely knows what he's doing. and I need to make sure that his internet browser isn't looking up anything inappropriate, because only good boys and girls can play Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
I know, Mai's crying in a
it's so
corner.
weird to me how Pyrrha and Mythra can be playable characters, but a spirit or background cameo for Mai is apparently too much.
I think it's because in Mai's case, it's so integrated with their character.
I guess, but I mean, okay, you design characters like Pyrrha and Mythra, you know exactly what you're doing.
I just hate that particular trope, to be honest. Anyway, to like get back to what's on
I want to talk
screen.
about cleavage.
Right now, Tifa and Aerith are tag teaming the sewer pumps, because this is like the absolute best place to start a friendship between two women, apparently. But like,
How did that count?
I don't know.
There was clearly white between the needle and the red
I
part.
literally crossfaded into an attempt that was visually identical to that, and the first one didn't work. So I don't know.
Maybe I think it was the game taking pity on you at that point.
Maybe. But in any case, what you have to do here is have Tifa pump up the pressure thing, and then have Aerith pull down the lever so that the needle is inside the red zone. But the more attempts you do, the wider Tifa is able to make the pressure zone that you have to aim for. So it sort of becomes easier with repetition. The reason I had to crossfade is that, well, after spending a whole day recovering lost video data from my now dead external hard drive, I had 2 hours of sleep before recording this entire...
I'm fucking done!
I had 2 hours of sleep before recording the entire sewer and train graveyard sequence. So, I was a bit sleep-baked while recording this segment of the game.
What was Cloud doing while they were doing that?
Hanging out.
I don't
checking
know.
his
Well, he
iPhone?
was the actual thing that they told him to do was watch the control panel for additional red lights to tell them that there were more blockages. But I get the feeling that Tifa just wanted him out of the way because she didn't trust him to do mechanical work.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. It's just I know in any situation where I'm the only man around and there's a bunch of women, if anything involves lifting stuff or pushing anything or doing any heavy lifting, I'm usually the first one recruited to do that. So I don't know why we'd have Stick Arms Aerith here pushing the
well,
pump
it's
instead of Cloud.
because as they were talking about while we were ignoring them, Tifa has worked with similar pumps and equipment for her bar and knows what she's doing with them, essentially.
Yeah, so have Aerith watch the monitors and Cloud and Tifa do it, is what I'm saying. I don't know, Aerith needs to eat several more sandwiches before she's going to have the arm strength to do that pushing.
Look, Tifa is the barmaid and the bouncer. Do you think she's going to rely on Cloud for the heavy lifting?
I mean, yeah, because even if there is someone... Even if I am strong enough in order to do something, I will always happily make someone else do it for me. So...
You know what? I don't think what you would do and what Tifa would do are anywhere on the same mental wavelength. So.
Yeah, and that's why I'm a real person and she's a video game character.
Truth. Anyway.
Man, we're fighting so many Ninja Turtles.
We are also fighting
Yeah, I know.
rats. We did fight rats earlier.
Also flying fish.
And there are
Yeah.
robots in this sewer.
But nobody ever talks about the TMNT's flying fish mascot character.
Oh, by the way, there is something that you can do with Arcane Ward that I'm just gleefully not doing because I always want Aerith to be the one who benefits from it. But you can target other characters with the Arcane Ward to put the ward down where they are instead of where you are. So, something to keep in mind if you want to do any advanced tactical things with the placement of it. But for the most
I'll occasionally do that with Barrett.
Did
yeah,
Sakaguchi have anything to do with this game?
No.
No.
No, he left Square in the mid-2000s.
Did he have
Yeah.
anything to do with the original Final Fantasy VII?
yes.
Yes, he wrote the story.
Yeah, he was the main guy behind it, really.
Okay. I ask because the way the arcane wards work remind me kind of how the magic worked in the last story. And,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, talking about games that need a remake, I would love if that game got remade.
Oh, yes,
Because the art
absolutely.
style is beautiful, and the Wii does not do it justice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
What? No, Ted. We need a fourth remake of Xenoblade Chronicles 1.
Last Story was always my favorite of the Rainfall games. I loved that
The
game.
Last Story and Lost Odyssey both absolutely could do with remakes and remasters.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a perfect game, and it's certainly got issues. I don't know how much I would like it again on a replay, because I played it again. I played it for the first time. It was probably 2011, so 10 years ago. Jesus Christ.
I mean, at least Last Story showed up on a system where people would actually play JRPGs. Lost Odyssey was stuck on the fucking Xbox 360, which is like the death sentence for all JRPGs.
There was another apparently pretty decent JRPG on Xbox. It was the one where you play as like
Infinite on Discovery?
No, it was the one where you played as like the ghost of a famous like classical music composer.
I've never heard of this one. Wait, Eternal Sonata?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Eternal Sonata. Yes. Okay. It's like crossed my radar like maybe one time in the entire existence.
I've heard it's decent. I don't know much more about it, but there's a surprising number of decent RPGs on the Xbox 360. It's just that it's the Xbox 360 and the audience doesn't care.
Yeah, like the Western audience that buys it is the shooter crowd, and the Japanese audience doesn't give a fuck. So
yeah, it's just one of those. It's kind of like, oh, Ryan, why do you always roll your eyes whenever Microsoft tries to push a JRPG so hard that they get like a year late? It's like, it's because the Xbox only crowd doesn't care.
Like, there is an RPG crowd in the Microsoft audience, but it's for the Western RPGs like Oblivion and Skyrim. So,
yeah. So it's just one of those. It's like, oh, Xbox is getting the Final Fantasy ports. It's like, yeah, it's certainly nice to have. I'm not saying they shouldn't have it, but it's like anyone who's interested in Final Fantasy probably has a PlayStation or a Nintendo.
The Western RPG crowd is kind of like you JRPG nerds whenever I talk about Western RPGs. It's like, yeah, okay, I don't care.
Yeah, Western RPGs and JRPGs, despite having 3/4 of the same name, really don't overlap as much as you think they would, because the gameplay appeal is so different.
They have very, very, very different focuses, narratively and mechanically. So,
WRPGs kind of took the D&D ideas that were inherent with the base level RPGs in gaming and went much farther with the D&D ideas, whereas JRPGs kind of took the base ideas and then went in their own direction.
Yeah, like
yeah, because it's funny to think about because both genres started by just copying D&D.
Yeah,
yeah, like the absolute oldest root of both genres are games like Ultima, and Ultima was literally collect 4 MacGuffins, travel back in time, and kill the main bad guy. It's basically the plot of Final Fantasy I.
Yeah, Ultima 1 and like the original wizardry are not that different from like Final Fantasy 1 or Dragon Quest 1 in terms of gameplay.
JRPGs like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy were heavily inspired by those old Western RPGs, but both genres went in entirely different directions from that basic point. So, it gets
it's kind of weird actually, because if you think about if you've ever played D&D before, JRPGs focus much more on taking elements of that series' combat and developing it in new, interesting ways, like turn-based kind of combat. Whereas I feel like Western RPGs, and I'm talking in super simple broad strokes here, Western RPGs kind of went more with the role-playing aspect.
Yeah, like, to put this in perspective, like, Japanese games tend to focus on, like, technical aspects, like making the game feel like very intentional in your actions, and that kind of fits. It seems to be a focus of a lot of Japanese developed games to have a technical feel to them, even if they are kind of simple when you get past that skin deep.
I think that stems back to the 70s through 90s. Japan was kind of known as the advanced technical group of people who like really push computers and stuff.
No, it's also kind of like just kind of an aspect of Japanese culture, but I'm not going to get into that too deep because I wouldn't be able to do it justice. But meanwhile, Western RPGs developed along the lines of Ultima 7, where the combat was basically a crapshoot, and it was entirely down to how you prepared your characters because they were just going to flail at the enemy regardless. So, and then you have something like Baldur's Gate, which, yeah, it's on the Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition system, but everything is happening so fast that unless you're constantly constantly pausing the game to micromanage your character's actions. They're just gonna flail at everything and hope for the best, and probably get
that's how you
disintegrated a
know
few
that
times.
that game is not an accurate representation of D&D or other tabletop games. Because if you know anything about how those work, combat takes 3 hours because somebody lost their book, the other person's too busy eating Cheetos, somebody's on a call with their mom.
Someone keeps rolling natural ones and twos and screwing everything up.
I've played exactly like one online session of D&D, and we got through like the first battle of the starter set adventure, and that was as far as we got. It was two kobolds.
It takes forever.
Yeah, pretty much. You'll inevitably have the one guy who insists that you roleplay every single shop interaction, and you just want to go to the DM and be like, yeah, can I just buy 30 arrows? And
I got shit to do.
We're having a sale.
Hello, fine sir. Welcome to our humble weapon shop. Can I help you with anything? No, I don't need to do that. Please just
What
let
are
me
you
buy.
buying, stranger?
Let me just buy 30 arrows and we can get to the interesting part, please.
No, now you have to haggle with a shopkeep because his prices are too high.
Oh, God.